who just, Burger King just tied up with Ted Norton to escape the country's taxes. Government regulations and taxes have driven our jobs over the country. I'm Everett DeBoer, like I said. Thank you for coming today and appreciate that time here. I'm a father of 2 sons. They're married for 33 years, 4 grandchildren. I never held political office in the past. The reason I'm running for office, U.S. Congress, I feel leaders have gotten us into this mess and not the leaders that can get us out. We need leaders who are accountable to the people, not special interest groups. The U.S. government is out of control. We've been living on job loss and deficit spending for well over 30 years. We borrow money from China. We give money back to China for humanitarian aid. We give money to countries we're blowing up and at war with. Congress takes our tax dollars, gives them to Mobil Oil to research alternative energy. Can I ask who monitored where that money went? The oil companies, insurance companies, as well as major corporations donate largely to both Democrat and Republican parties. These special interest groups control the way politicians vote. They no longer vote for what's best for the country. They vote for what's best for the party or what it takes to get reelected. The national debt is $1.6 million per minute, $2.66 billion per day. Number one, taxing the rich cannot solve this problem. Number two, who are the rich? If the government takes the money from the rich, where do the rich get their money from? You and I. The bottom line is, you have to realize when the Democrats talk about taxing the rich, they're talking about taxing you. A company has to be profitable or it goes out of business. Again, taxing the rich is taxing us. We don't have a taxing problem. People want to talk about a flat tax and different stuff. We have a spending problem, a serious spending problem. Republicans, Democrats alike, are each trying to outspend each other just to take care of their friends. Again, the United States has the highest corporate tax rate on the planet, as well as the most complex regulations. We've been told companies have gone overseas for cheaper labor, while Democrats want to raise minimum wage. How does that work? This is very counterproductive. To add to that, who benefits from minimum wage increases? All the restaurants, all the fast foods, all the hotels and motels, prices will increase. There's taxes on all of those. The government made more money. All your insurance premiums go up because it's your workman's comp and so forth. So all your overhead goes up. So insurance companies and government make more money by minimum wages going up. At the end of the day, like I said, government revenues and insurance company revenues have increased. The workers no better off. We do not need to make more money. We need to keep more of the money we make. Government taxing, government spending, government regulations need to be drastically reduced before we'll see any true economic growth in America. We can talk about job fairs, turn the economy around, and a host of other good-sounding solutions. But unless we take control and bring government back to its original intent and original purpose, we're talking a fantasy. We the people must lead, the leaders will follow. Will you get involved? I need your support, I need your vote on Tuesday the 9th.
Thank you very much. You did well. You made it within 4 minutes. Now, we need to have you listen to some of the people that are fellow residents who want to ask you some questions. And the first question is from, do I see a hand? Let me ask you a question. We have thousands of people coming across the border in this country without any real way to control them, it appears. What would you do if you're elected to encourage those people to either go back home or to do something with them? So who would like to start first? Since you were the last one to talk, why don't you start first?
I'll take it. If I had the sole decision, I think it's a 2-minute solution. Call up the National Guard, shut down the border. Case closed. Now let's get serious about securing it. They all want to point fingers. The Republicans were in charge under Bush, and they did nothing about it. The Democrats are in charge now. They do nothing about it. It's all political hype. What can I do as one voice? Like I said, without major money and just a business card, talking people to people. I've been on the streets for the past 6 weeks, talking people to people. I believe that money still does not own this country, but good, clean effort and straight talk can straighten some things out.
Brendan, you haven't spoken for a while. Would you like to answer that question?
Sure. Sorry. Okay. This is a big issue to me. Both of my parents were immigrants to this country. But they didn't just walk in. You know, they came in, they went through the process to get here. Thankfully, they came here and had me live my whole life in this great country. But you can't just walk into any other country. Why should people be able to just walk into ours? It just doesn't make any sense. So the number one thing we absolutely have to do is secure the borders. And it's relatively easy to take care of the problem of the people who are here and not supposed to be here. If, you know, the American public decides that, you know, you have to be here legally in order to be able to do anything here, you're not going to be able to get jobs or whatever, we should take care of our own and, you know, give the people who are legitimately here the opportunity to go to work and save this country. But this is a huge issue to us, and it's just going to keep getting worse if we don't address that issue. And I agree. We should be having the National Guard on the border, making sure that the border is secure.
Tom?
Dan, would you like to answer the question?
Sure. You know, it's an interesting situation on the border. There are a couple of things, you know, as the gentleman before me noted, that we need to do right away. We need to secure the border. Absolutely. We need to enforce the existing laws. Absolutely. I don't believe that if you got here illegally, you should be able to become a U.S. citizen. To me, it doesn't make sense that you're rewarded with that honor if you broke the law to get here. At the same time, we've got a problem that has become even more serious over the last 4 to 6 months than it's ever been. And I think we have to ask the question, why? Is it something that's happened with the president? Is it something that's happened at the border? Is it something that's happened in Central America that has caused those folks to flee to America? And I think it's probably a combination of things. We have a lot of children who have come up. I think we have to take proper care of the children. But then we probably need to work to reunite them with their families and to discourage more people from coming. And we should reach out to the governments of the countries they're fleeing and try to help them solve the crisis on their side. Because there's something fundamentally wrong in all of those countries, about 3 in Central America, that's causing these people to flee to America. We've really got to secure the border, though, and make it more difficult to get here. And if you do get here, we need to send you back. Because until we shut the border down, it will be an invitation to flee to America. I want immigrants, and I think they're great for our country, but it's got to be done legally. And that brings up a couple of points. I don't support a comprehensive immigration bill, because when Congress passes comprehensive anything bills, we end up with a lot of unintended consequences that really don't help us to solve the problem, and it creates new ones. I think you approach immigration step by step by step. We also need to reform how you can legally immigrate to the United States. It may well be that one of the reasons so many people come illegally is that they can't get through the legal system, particularly those that are poorer and coming from poor nations. But we also need to make it easier for people who really want to be here and see America as that shining city on the hill to get here. And I saw it at UNH and the other universities where I've worked. Brilliant students come from other countries, they study at our universities, and then they leave. Many of them want to stay, but our immigration laws won't permit it. There was a student a year ago who graduated from UNH who desperately wanted to stay in America. Brilliant student, top of his class, varsity soccer player, superb individual, and he couldn't stay because of our laws. That's the sort of thing we've got to fix. And let's make some sense of our immigration laws and policies.
Now, is there a question from the audience? Here's one over here.
Always
Wait a minute, Jane.
You talk about getting rid of Obamacare and replacing it with something, but no one ever says what you're going to replace it with. You know, I'd like to know what you think about that.
Shall I start with that since I'm the one who made the comment?
Start this time.
All right. You know, Obamacare, I think when I look at it, we were sold a little bit of a bill of goods. We were told that Obamacare will help the uninsured to get insurance coverage. And I think most Americans agree with that in principle. You know, I haven't talked to many people, Republicans, Independents, Democrats, who've said, you know, I really don't think the uninsured should have any options. They're not saying that. They're saying, I think that the uninsured should have options. But that isn't what's happened with Obamacare. Most of the people who signed up for Obamacare already had insurance, and they signed up for Obamacare because their policy was canceled, and they had to sign up for it. And one of the examples I give is, you have a car in your driveway. Could you imagine getting a letter from the government saying, your car doesn't meet the safety standards, we're taking your car away? You can buy a new one, and we'll even subsidize it, but you got to pick one of these cars. And we say, well, come on, nobody would ever do that. That's what they did with health insurance. And I have known many business owners, small business owners, sole proprietors, partnerships, who had their policies canceled. And they're paying more and or have a higher deductible and less access to care. And that's not what we were sold. I think that a lot of people also like the idea of children staying on policies till age 26. My father was affected by a pre-existing condition. He was a business owner later in life, developed kidney stones, and the second time his insurance company dropped him. He had a hard time getting coverage again, and he could only get it with a rider on his kidneys. So the rest of his career, until he went on Medicare, his kidneys were his problem. Fortunately, he was okay.
Let's let the other two have
Oh,
a shot at
wait a
that
second.
question too.
He didn't ever say what he'd replace it with. He just said things about it.
Yeah, happy to do that if, sorry, you.
Let's hear from the other two first.
Well, if anyone has heard of the veteran situation with veteran hospitals, that's Obamacare. Government-run insurance, government-run healthcare. It's a serious problem. What we need is competition. In 2001, I moved my business from Massachusetts to New Hampshire. My workman's comp insurance went from 9% to 21%. I called my employees and I told them everyone got a 12% raise. But don't get too excited, because the insurance company took it all. New Hampshire had, at that time, one workman's comp insurance carrier. Here's your bill, like it or lump it. The insurance problem is easy to solve. Deregulate it, so that insurance companies can compete and give you a better price, and they'll fight for your money, and they'll fight for your business. It's an easy solution. Take government. We do not need government in our healthcare. We do not need government in our school systems, and we need federal funding is a serious problem across the board. Federal government needs to be brought back to its original intent to secure our borders and the safety of the people. And the answer is take down, deregulate the insurance companies, that they can all compete, and then they'll all offer you a better deal and a better deal and a better deal.
Brendan, would you like to reply to that?
Well, I mentioned last night the debate, what are you going to do with this and what is the solution? And I have mentioned that that's the one place that I would support amnesty, to allow the people to go back to what they had before this abomination was put on us. And the fact of the matter is, this affordable health care idea was not about health care, it was about raising taxes. That's why they didn't want to allow anybody to read it, because all that's in there was huge immediate tax increases with maybe some health care help down the road. It was a big sham from the beginning, and we have to be on guard that we don't allow this to happen. My feeling is, if I'm representing you, and they're going to give me something that's going to affect your thing, I am not going to vote on it if I haven't read it. It's just not going to. It's just not the right way to do things. We have to have people down there who are going to represent your best interests and read the bills and make sure that we know all the details. And I don't think many people would have stood up and said, "Oh yeah, we're going to raise the taxes for 2 years, and you might get some health insurance 2 years later," when we already owe $127 trillion.
Dan, very briefly, would you like to reply to that question?
Sure, very briefly. If you go to my website, guinnessforcongress.com, and select the Perspectives tab, you'll see a position paper that I have on healthcare and what I think we can do there. And I think there are a couple good points made here. You know, opening up insurance markets is the right way to go. It creates more competition, broader risk pools, and that's one example of what can be done. I think reforming the legal system a little bit to reduce the cost of malpractice insurance for doctors and hospitals is another good move. And there are a host of those that can be made. But I think at the end of the day, most Americans would like to see some sort of assistance for the uninsured and enable them to get health care. And that's something I can support. It's lower cost access than going to the emergency room, getting them to GPs and others. But let's figure out how to do that in a way that makes sense.
Another question? Yes, Bob.
I'd like to hear the positions on what we should be doing.
Wait a minute.
I'd like to hear their positions on what we should be doing and what we should not be doing with regard to what's going on in the Middle East.
Now, whose turn is it to go first?
Maybe Brendan.
Huh?
All right, go ahead.
The Middle East has always been a quagmire. I mean, the people who are there are not on the same wavelength that the people in this country are. And my personal feeling is they're like 1,000 years behind us. And the thought of being free and has just never entered their mind. It just doesn't. It's always been nomad societies there, that the borders are shifting all the time because of one idea overruns the other, and they just never settle down to believing that they individually are important. So we're not going to be able to go in there, and we're always saying that we're going to give them democracy. Well, the fact of the matter is, democracy is a failed system. It has always failed, because you run out of other people's money. And it always fails for that reason. And why should we be pushing that idea on them? I believe we should let them, do whatever they're going to do on their own over there, as long as they're not harming us. I don't like the idea of getting involved in any kind of a war. But, you can't just stand by and say, oh, yeah, it's okay. If you run across an American, you cut their head off, and that's fine. We have to say, we can't take that. And my idea is, war is terrible. Really want to try to stay away from it at all costs. But if you decide you have to go, you go to win. You just don't go in and pussyfoot around. You go to win.
Eric, would you like to reply?
We have to agree with Brendan that their idea of freedom is totally different than ours. Their freedom is to do whatever they want with whoever they want and however they want to do it. Today they pushed a bunch of people into the street, waited till the crowds gathered and shot them. They have a whole idea of difference, and the problem is that we should never gone in there back in the 80s. First we helped Iran, then we helped Iraq, then we helped Iran, then we helped Iraq. They were natural predators. They were busy fighting each other. We went in and we messed things up. We have our more serious problems right here at home, securing our borders and making sure that they're not here for more 9/11 attacks and so forth is where we really need to focus to handle that situation over there. I think if we want to be serious, we need to get close to Israel, because Israel has a very close ear to the ground. They know what's going on, and if we want to take serious their information, we can do some straighten some things out and take care of some serious situations. But as Brendan said, that is, for the most part, a pretty much lost cause that we do not deserve to be in. We need to be here in America, focusing on manufacturing jobs, cutting government, and making America strong again.
Okay.
A couple of things here. We're all paying close attention to it now because of ISIS and the horrible things that they've done to Americans and potentially more. ISIS has said they're coming here. I have no reason to doubt them.
Absolutely.
And that's a major concern. So we've got to get ISIS. We need to destroy them, and that's all we need to do. How do we do that? Nobody wants to send troops back to Iraq or into Syria. We can take advantage of the Syrian ground forces and the Iraqi ground forces, because neither Syria's leadership nor Iraq's leadership wants ISIS to continue. Use those forces to fight the war on the ground, and use American air power and technology to target ISIS where they are. And I think if we combine those things, we can get it done. This sort of ties into the immigration question a little bit, though. When you look at that southern border of America and think about how easy it is to get across it, and with ISIS having stated they want to come here, it points out the importance of securing that border.
Another, yes, go ahead. Oops, she's coming.
Has anyone
have an estimate of the number of troops it would take to close the border, keeping in mind it's a 24-hour operation? What would the annual cost be?
Let's see, Everett, I think you have to learn first.
Absolutely no clue. Our armed forces are already on the books. They're already, we already have different training camps and so forth. Why can't the border be a good place for our training? Through and through, it accomplishes both missions at the same time. It secures our borders. It works as their training field, and it all synchronizes in together. So the ultimate cost, very minimal. Again, not being a politician, not being in politics, and as Dan had spoken last night, you know, we have Army generals and then people that know the real cost of mobilizing forces.
Dan, would you buy?
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I don't know what the cost would be. We do know that Texas has mobilized their National Guard already to get it done. And, you know, there are resources to do it. And over the longer term, there are probably smarter ways to police the border. I mean, it doesn't necessarily require human capital to do it in all places. We have terrific technology, I think, that can be deployed as well. We've got to get serious about solving the problem. And I don't see that seriousness in Washington. But let's figure it out, because there is an answer there. We can do it. Other countries do it. We can do it too.
Brendan?
Yeah, my feeling is the cost of securing the border is really not very much at all in the big scheme of things. Our problem is, which Dan is kind of getting around, there is no incentive right now to do it. That's what our problem is. They're not doing it. And as soon as they decide they want to secure the border, we can secure the border. It's the will to do it that is missing, and you know, we have a political party out there that has no interest in securing the border because they're counting on those people slipping through and voting for the Democrats. That's why we can't secure the border.
I was thinking legalize the vote.
Well, we have a party that is in power in some sections that they're all in favor of that. You know, it's big issue now is these, you know, people voting who don't live in the district. There's all kinds of things. But securing the border is, in the scheme of everything that the government should be doing, that would cost very, very low, in my estimation.
If I could jump in, I think the way they get the vote is amnesty and a path to citizenship. That's how it would happen.
Is there a question over here?
Thank you. Setting aside for the moment the complexity of a 60,000-page tax code, which no one understands, I'd like to ask you about regulations. In 1991, it was estimated there were over 300,000 separate regulations issued by various federal agencies, which then become law, affecting businesses, and many other institutions throughout the United States. This has obviously increased since 1991, and it makes running any business or any institution incredibly complex, frequently inefficient, and terribly expensive. Is there any effort that you would make, any of you, to try to control and eliminate this rather horrible load on American society?
Dan, I think it's your turn.
All right. You know, one of the things that I talk about in my campaign quite often is regulation and also tax. I hope we'll get to that at some point. But, you know, regulation increases every year. And every new regulation has a cost that's being paid somewhere. And as a business owner, I'm all too familiar with the regulations, the things we have to post on the walls, the reporting to the banks as a result of Dodd-Frank, and just little things that pile on year after year. And many of these regulations come at us through no act of Congress, but out of the agencies themselves. The EPA is the one everyone talks about, but there are many, many others that are doing essentially the same thing. I think all of our regulations have to be reviewed unit by unit by unit and determine what really makes sense and what doesn't. I think it should be done in consultation with the business community and local governments, who are all affected by edicts that come from Washington. Some regulations make sense, not all of them do. Dodd-Frank is an amazing burden on banks, and it's keeping small banks from getting started. When we bought the new hotel back in November, I was amazed at the exponential increase in paperwork from 2008 to today. And we're only halfway done with Dodd-Frank. Small banks are struggling because they can't keep up with the regulation. They can't create compliance departments like big banks and spread that cost over a larger number of assets and things. So it's a major, major problem, and we've got to dial some of that back.
Brendan?
I'm sitting up here thinking, because I really love this. You know, we go to so many different things, and this to me is the best, because you get to ask the people what they're interested in, and you can answer them, and I feel that's great. As far as your question, sir, I have two things in the back of my mind. You don't get to bring it up for what you stand for, usually in this controlled atmospheres where you have somebody running it, and you can only answer this question. I have two things that I think are absolutely necessary to start to fix this country. The first one is a sunset law. That everything that's on the books other than the Constitution, if it's 10 years old, it disappears unless it's renewed. And you have to individually renew everyone. That could take care of it. My other big thing is our taxes. I'm in favor of the fair tax. I don't know how many people are aware of what the fair tax is, but that's what I'm in favor of. It eliminates the IRS. The fair tax is a national sales tax. And you pay it on every time you buy something, you end up paying the same. But if you're working, and you're working for some minimum wage job at $10 an hour, you're working 40 hours a week, at the end of the week, you're going to take home a paycheck for $400. Now, you're going to be paying taxes, you know, every time you buy something to keep the country running, but at least it's in your hands and you decide which way you want to go with it. And I think that's absolutely necessary to fix this country.
Eric, you want to add anything to what you said?
I'd just like to elaborate on the tax situation. In 1878, it went to the Supreme Court and it was deemed unconstitutional to tax the American people. In 1913, change the judges and change the politicians, and all of a sudden we have an income tax. Taxing the people and taxing corporations does not pay down 1 penny of debt. Unless we manufacture things in this country and export them to other countries to generate revenue, that is the only way we pay down debt. These taxes are wrong. Taxes should still be illegal like they were back in the 1800s, and taxes do not pay down the debt. They do not accomplish any security for the government, for this country. And back to his question, government needs to be brought back to its original intent. The United States federal government needs to be securing our borders and for the benefit and the welfare of the people. Again, not in our taxes, not in our schools, not on our highways. We should not have federal highway funding. New Hampshire has its own state and its own roads. Fix them. Take that tax money and use it accordingly. If you use it foolishly, your taxes are going to go up and people are going to leave the state just like they're doing right now. Hopefully that answered your question.
Next question. Mary, you have a question? Wait a minute.
Would you each comment on growing income equality in this country?
I think it's your turn, Brandon.
Growing income inequality. That's it. I think in human nature, if you're in a free society like ours is, you're not going to have equal income distribution because the people are not all the same. You're going to have people who don't produce that much, they're not going to make a lot, and you're going to have some incredible producers that's going to make a ton of money. If you're a free society, that's just going to happen. So I don't think it's a part of the government to be trying to legislate the ability of the people to produce what they can produce. Everybody is on their own track to do what they can and to do. We should all have the ability to shoot to the moon if you're capable of doing that. If you're not capable, then you do what you are capable of. We're never going to change the way the world is. There are always going to be some people who are dependent. And if you don't steal all the money from the 94% of the people who are not dependent, they can be able to easily look out for the 6% who are dependent. And they will do that if you didn't steal half of their money on taxes. That's my position. It's up to us to look after the welfare of the people, not the government.
I think now we go down the line, everybody's going up.
Okay, absolutely. Exactly what Brendan's saying. If you go, I love the Bible. The Bible is so explicit. It talks about money. It talks about all different things. There's several different parables. One, Jesus gave this person $10, this person $10, this person $10. They all were given the same amount. One come back and got 20, one come back and had 15, this person come back and had 10. What did Jesus do? He said, you lazy, slothful servant, let me take the 10 away from you and give it to the man who did most with it. Contrary to what the United States government does. A man works hard and then builds a business. So one person wants to work at McDonald's, another person wants to manage a McDonald's, another person wants to own a McDonald's. Why should they all be equally compensated? I went to 1 year of college, first semester, and the teacher, she was saying how the doctor was just as important as the garbage collector. Therefore, they should both be equally compensated the same pay. And I says, wait a minute, I'm 18 years older. I says, the doctor went through 12 years of school, worked days, went to school nights. They didn't have this free tuition junk like they have today. And the other fellow, he just got out of school and jumped on the back of the rubbish truck. They should be paid the same money? I don't think so. We locked arms, we fought the whole semester. I says, you're going to teach me something, lady? I'm gone. And I'm sorry. No equal compensation for equal pay, for equal work. But to judge a man who makes millions of dollars, I say don't count his money. You worry about your own money. And we've gone for different parables through the Bible, how Jesus gave this guy $10, this guy $5, this guy $2. They weren't all equal. But he doubled his, and he doubled his, and he buried his. Take it away from you, slothful servant, and give it to the guy who does the most with it. Contrary to what our government wants to do to us.
And if you want to,
Yeah, well, take this to the extreme. Income equality is socialism, and it doesn't work. And we've seen that all over the world. But I think what you folks are talking about here, thinking about, is that top 1% and everybody else. And there has been attention drawn to that inequality. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal some months ago that really dug into that top 1% to try to understand, how that 1% was making money faster. And what they discovered was that only the top 0.1% is really amassing huge wealth quickly. The rest of that top 1% is keeping about the same pace as all of us. And that was a rather interesting result. So the question is, why are you seeing such consolidation and growth of wealth in that top 0.1%? I don't know how you get at that. I'm not sure we should get at that. I think we should all, as I think Brendan said, we should focus on creating an economy and a system that encourages people to get out there and take risks and try to do good things, but also has an economic base from which you can do that. And an economy that's growing at the rate ours is, if it grows at all, the first quarter of the year it didn't grow, the second quarter it did. That's not the right environment for the 99% to really get something launched in the same way that they could have 10 years ago. And I really think that's the core of the problem. How can we get a strong economy, a strong economic base going, so everyone can reach that success and pursue the American dream? And I think ultimately that's it. How can we all pursue the American dream and succeed?
another question.
We've answered them all.
Did you answer? Oh, Jane's got another one.
Speaking of wealth, I noticed that everyone in Congress is very rich. What do you think about all the perks that congressional people get and their term limits and things like that? I mean, they sort of perpetuate one another. on and on and on. I'm just curious about that.
Everett, I think it's your turn to be first.
Very good. Congress wasn't always a paid position. You were a statesman and you served. And you served because you cared about the country. Today, it's phenomenal with the perks. The Congress people's children don't have to pay college tuition. Tell me that isn't absurd. And like you say, they have all the wealth and all the money. I believe that we should possibly run a 6-year term. You get elected once, you serve your 6 years, and you're out. That way there, you don't have to continually worry about chasing around money. How am I gonna get it reelected? Who's gonna finance my campaign and so forth? You can go in, your first year or two, you're learning the ropes, you're learning how the process goes. Your second 2 years, you get some things accomplished. Your final 2 years, here's what I stood for while I was in office, here's what you want to remember me for, helping the people.
Dan, I think you're next.
Yeah, I think, whatever laws apply to the American people should apply to Congress.
Absolutely.
And that's the first place to begin. You have to ask the question, why isn't Congress on Obamacare, right? They're not. Why do they have special retirement instead of Social Security? They do. There are all sorts of perks that apply to Congress. Those should not exist. Same rules, same benefits as every other American. I think that makes sense. I do support some sort of term limit. I'm not certain what that should be, but I think we need to do it. We need to avoid people getting into that continual service in Congress and becoming corrupted by the system. So what is that time frame that keeps people from forgetting who they're serving and just thinking about themselves and Congress? To me, it's a pretty simple answer. Congress should have the same sorts of systems in place that we do. It's only fair. And what's good enough for the American people should absolutely certainly be good enough for the Congress.
Brendan, you want to answer?
Yeah, I'm running as a volunteer. I have no intention of seeking or taking any pension because I just don't think it's right. I'm going down there and I like the idea that Dan mentioned. They're supposed to be just like everybody else. They can't be passing any kind of law that doesn't apply to them. So if you can't give it to everybody in the country, you shouldn't get it. So I don't think everybody in the country is going to get a pension because they work someplace for 2 years and they're going to get a lifetime pension out of it. So I'm totally against pensions for elected officials down in Washington. I wouldn't want it. And I think we have to start sending people down there who understand they're going down there to serve the will of the people who sent them there, not to build this big career up and all of a sudden get all these perks because they did this favor for this guy, and then even if they don't get reelected, they get hired into some high-paying job for all the favors they did for them while they were there. We have to change that. We need to do better. That's why when I go out there and run, I never ask anybody for any money. I just ask for the vote.
Which brings up another subject. If you notice out there, if you look about this high on everybody, you see white hair or no hair. Now, we are interested in Social Security and Medicare. So, Dan, would you like to talk to us a little bit about how we're going to save the Medicare?
Yeah. Well, I think all of us up here are getting old enough to really think about those things ourselves. I think we've got to save both of those programs. And right now, they're both on an unsustainable course. In the case of Social Security and similarly Medicare, right now we have 5 people paying into the system for every one that's getting benefits. Not that long ago, it was 8 to 1. In 10 years, there will be 2 people paying in for every 1 person drawing out. And it becomes clear when you look at the numbers that this won't work. And over the next decade, with no effort to save these programs, we add $10 trillion to the national debt. The following decade, we add 30 trillion more. So that's 40 trillion added to the national debt in 20 years if we don't do something. And what I've advocated for is a sort of strategic plan for the federal budget for all programs, where you've got this long-range 10-year plan that sets budget goals for Congress and that they must meet as a part of the annual budgeting process. And with that has to come a real hard look at how we fund these programs and how we can continue to meet our obligations to the public as they reach retirement age. And I think that's really important. We've been in this spot before, and we've been able to reform things so we can save Social Security. We can do that again. But the longer we wait, the more difficult it becomes. So we've got to do it soon. If we don't, my son who's 23, my son who's 21, my daughter who's 14 will pay into this system and never see any benefits themselves. And that's not appropriate. We've got to get this fixed. And we can, we will, we'll save it. The sooner the better. Would you like to reply?
Sure. Every time I think of Social Security, I think back to when I graduated from high school. That was 1958. And there was a big celebration on, because that was the 25th anniversary of Social Security. But there was a problem. They had figured out that it was unsustainable. Because at the time they instituted it, they never expected there were actually going to be people who were looking to collect it. But here we are. We proved them all wrong. We're still here. And we're not supposed to be, according to their calculations. So they didn't put any of their money away because they thought it was just free money. That's what our problem is. The government always thinks it's free money. Anything that goes in, they spend it. And they write it on IOU. And that IOU is for your children and your grandchildren. And this is a totally unsustainable system. Somebody's got to stand up and say, we need to fix this. Now, this is America. I know they ran those commercials about running the old people over the bridge or something the last election. That's not going to happen here. The people would not stand for that. We the people would not stand for it. But we the people have to start standing up and say, let's do something, because this just kicking the can down the road is going to lead to disaster. And, you know, if I go down there, I'm going to tell them, look, we have all these people we made promises to, older people, and I'm in that category now. You know, I figure out if everything goes the way I want it to go, I'll be working until I'm 97. But that's what has to be done. You know, we have to address the issue. We can't keep doing nothing.
Everett, do you have anything to add to that?
Brenda's on target. They just keep spending the money. We don't have a tax problem. We have a spending problem. They talk about what do they call it? They call the benefits entitlements. Well, how is it an entitlement if you paid into it and you bought it and you paid for it? Yes, you are entitled to it. It is your money. And what really bothers me deeply is that our folks never took a day off of work, never took a workman's comp check, never took an unemployment check. You know, walked to school both ways uphill, you know, in the snowstorm. So, you know, they never stole a dime out of it. And now, your Social Security check doesn't go too far. No one wants to talk about inflation and the situation this country is in. As we sit here today, China, Russia, India, and Brazil no longer use the U.S. dollar bill to barter and trade with. This country today is in serious situation. We are where Germany was in 1920. We've all heard the stories about the wheelbarrows full of money going to the store to buy food and to buy things. That's where this country is. We need change in Washington. We need drastic change, and we need you, the people, to vote for change, and the change sits in front of you here. And I just pray to God that we will not re-elect anyone. Elect somebody who's never been in office, because we need to make a statement to our U.S. constitutional people and government. It's up to us to take over America and take back America. We're in trouble.
Another question. Mary, wait a minute. She's coming.
We are all old enough to remember the old days when great statesmen in Washington compromised. We don't see that anymore. I think most of us hold no hope out for legislation out of Congress. What would you do to change that?
I think it's your turn, Brendan, isn't it?
That's fine with me. I'll take whatever turn I get. I get worried about compromise. Compromise means I gave you a little something that's not right, so you're going to give me a little something that's not right. So I kind of don't care too much for compromise. I care for our Constitution. and the principles this country was founded on. That's what I care about. And our problem is that we've gotten way off the track. We no longer elect people who think that this is a Christian nation and that we're supposed to be following the laws that were made under Judeo-Christian principles. They think now we're about, you can do anything you want as long as you're not hurting somebody else. No responsibility involved. I think we're better than that. I believe this is an exceptional country, and it's time for the people to stand up and make it exceptional again.
Eric, want to add?
Absolutely, I agree. When there's no hope in the future, there's no power in the present. And we have the younger generation that don't see how they can get there from here. We have a hopeless generation. And unless we the people, like I say, I've never been in politics before, Dan's never been in politics before, he's a town selectman. Far cry from a politician.
No, you notice that.
Well, I mean, you're not in for the big money.
No, nobody does that job for the money.
And so, we're here for the love of the nation, I believe. I haven't taken any, I haven't had any donations. I run on some business cards, the sweat of my brow, 2 feet in the mouth that God gave me. What am I gonna change? I hope that we can upset and make a statement that we the people can win without big money. And then we can go forward from there. Because my whole goal would be, after they get elected, find some young, energetic, radical right-wing conservative to take over my seat so I can go down to Massachusetts and fight the fight.
Dan,
I'm up for battle.
you want to say anything about that?
I don't know what to speak on it.
Maybe you should restate the question.
No, I got that. You know, I think one of the important jobs of any representative in Congress is to work to find solutions. And I think to do that, you've got to listen to the folks you're working with and hope that they'll listen to you. But, you know, I found this working at universities for 23 years, probably the most political environment you can find. They say the politics are so steep because the stakes are so low at universities. But in Congress, the stakes are big. And when you try to do something at a university or in Congress, not everyone's going to agree. But we can all agree on the major issues facing the nation. Right? Certainly, it's the economy, it's the deficit and the debt, probably regulation and taxes. And you can get Democrats and Republicans to agree on that. What you can't get them to agree on oftentimes is how to solve those problems. This goes back to the comment I made on immigration. Congress has this propensity lately to try to solve problems with great big bills that will answer every question. It's not possible. The way to move things forward is to identify the big problems, identify the areas where you agree, and start tackling those. And over time, you will begin to find there are other areas where you agree and can make progress. And I use this technique at UNH because trying to build a new building for a business school on a pretty liberal campus is not the easiest thing to do. But I identified how this would benefit everyone and how we could move forward with it. And we were able to get it done. It was not easy. I didn't have much support initially, but we got it done. Same approach will work in Congress. Deficit and debt are a huge problem. Everybody agrees. All right, let's get serious. And I think that'll work. We got to listen. And lately, Washington hasn't been willing to listen. And you see it, you'll see it in the general election campaigns. You'll have a stake way out there, you'll have another stake way out there, and you go to Washington with stakes on the far right and the far left, and nothing in the middle, and no spirit of compromise, which I understand Brendan's point, but also no spirit of working together, and that's the key. We're here because we have it.
Is there another question? One more here. Where is she? Oh, there she is. She's coming.
You told us about the troubles of the world that we could face, the mess in Washington. How do you account for the stock market being at an all-time high?
Can I start?
Sure, go
Oh,
ahead.
sure, you want to.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's sort of my area, right? I don't want to be too complex on it though. But the big issue is that business isn't growing, the economy isn't growing, and interest rates are very low. So what's happening is people who have capital, money, are looking for the best opportunities for return on investment. And bonds aren't yielding very much right now. CDs most certainly aren't. Businesses don't seem to be growing that much, though they're amassing profits and capital. So the stock market is sort of the last resort for anyone who has extra money around, whether it's a business or a fund or an individual. So they're putting their money there in hopes of finding some return that beats the market. Well, stocks go up as more money comes into that market and there's more competition for shares, so that's what's driving the share prices up. You might ask, well, why isn't business growing and why isn't it investing? Because businesses like us, if we're uncertain about the future, we don't spend our money, we save. That's what they're doing. They're saving their money because they're uncertain about the deficit and the debt, they're uncertain about Obamacare, they're uncertain about regulation. They don't like the corporate tax rate in America. So, you put all that together, stocks are the best place to put your money right now. And now, there will be a time when it's the worst place. We'll see when that comes. Year or two, I think.
You want to answer either one?
My opinion of the whole thing is, you have to look at what the stock market is, and right now it's this huge bubble. And it's being blown up by not real money. That's our real problem, is our money's not real. And eventually, that's going to become the huge issue that we're going to have to face if we don't do something to change how we're doing it. You can't just keep printing money and say it's real when it's not. And it was mentioned earlier that all these countries that are now no longer accepting our phony money because they know what we're doing with it. And we're going to have real hard times ahead if we don't start making changes and start reorganizing our country in the way it should be.
Eric, you want to say something?
I absolutely would. In 1964, my dad built a house. The mortgage on the place was $11,400. Today, I pay $17,000 a year in property taxes alone. That house would probably sell for about $400,000. The foundation is cracked, the roof is old, the cabinets are old, the